Is the Book of Enoch real or fake? Sex Toys of the Gods, Part 2. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. This is the gospel truth about the Book of Enoch. Is it true or is it a forgery? Part 2 of Sex Toys of the Gods. That's followed with a question mark, just so you know. Many of you that are in the alternative truth community, many of you that are in the alternative religious community, hold the Book of Enoch in high regard. And the fact of the matter is, and I know this might sting a little bit, that most of you hold it in high regard because most of you hold it in high regard. There's very few people that have actually studied the Book of Enoch and its origins and its purported origins. Very few people know about the book or know how it came to be. And yet it enjoys almost universal acceptance within the alternative community. And because of its almost universal acceptance, there is also an almost universal acceptance of the fiction that there are bad angels that had sex with human women. And there are bad angels that continue to have sex with human women, and that we shouldn't, and we should be worried about these women falling victim to sexual intercourse as launched by these false angels. And I just thought of a verse that we need to look up in the scriptures. Okay, there we go. I love it when a plan comes together. So we're going to look at the Book of Enoch. We're going to see if the Book of Enoch is reliable. And we're going to see if, in fact, this idea of angels or spiritual beings capable of having physical intercourse with women and impregnating them is true. Now, we already looked at Genesis chapter 6 and saw that the text explicitly says that the sons of God were male-born children of human women, and that the daughters of men were female-born children of human women, and that they were not in any way spiritual beings. And in fact, the text went out of the way to say they were male beings from human mothers that were from the earth and not from the sky. That was plain and explicit and clear in the text. See the last video, which was entitled Sex Toys of the Gods. There's no doubt about that. Now, if that be true, and it is, because it's completely emphatic in the text, then one of your only remaining places where you could say, oh, yes, angels did have sex with women, is to lean on the Book of Enoch. Because in the Book of Enoch, it is taught that there are these watcher angels. And these watcher angels are said to, at least some of them have been what you would call bad angels. And I'm looking now at Wikipedia about watcher angels. And this is at the ear or the ear in. That's the one. The ones that are watcher angels. There are two places in the book of Daniel where he talks about simply watchers, doesn't say anything about them, just that they were watchers. And it is said that in the book of Enoch that there are these ear-in, which are bad angels, and they were angels that actually went down and had sex with humans. So the book of Enoch says that there were 200 fallen angels who married and commenced an unnatural union with human women and who taught forbidden knowledge. So if you look down here through this list of angels, these are supposedly angels or watchers that had sex with human women. Now, I want you to notice, and I did not write this Wikipedia entry, the Book of Enoch lists 200 fallen angels who married and had sex with human women. And it links this belief that it happened to the Genesis chapter that we looked at earlier that shows that there is absolutely, positively no doubt that there was no sexual relations between any spiritual being and any human woman, at least not ever talked about within the text of Scripture. So, to know what this absolutely positively says, we can certainly reject this idea that 200 fallen angels married and commenced sex with women. It just could not have happened based upon the text. So you have a battle. Are you going to accept the text of Genesis as being true, or are you going to accept the text of the book of Enoch as being true? Well, that's up to you. You may reject both. But in order to say that the book of Enoch is true, you ought to at least know something about the book of Enoch. So let's take a look about the book of Enoch. And the best place to start learning about the book of Enoch is to learn about the guy who rediscovered the book of Enoch. And one thing you should know about the book of Enoch, during the time that it was discovered and for the 50 years beforehand, it was the Holy Grail of European spiritual society. Everybody wanted to find the book of Enoch. It was the most talked about, the most sought after. It was the Holy Grail of spirituality in England, on the continent of Europe in its day. It was the absolute most sought after thing, was the most talked about thing. If there had been coast to coast in those days, it would have always been about the book of Enoch. If there had been, I'm not going to say their names, if there had been people making speculative spiritual shows, then they would have been talking about the book of Enoch. And oh, wait, they still are. But at any rate, let's look at the book of Enoch, where it started, how it started, and I think this will give you some perspective on it. James Bruce was born in 1730. He died in 1794. I want you to notice he was a Scottish traveler and travel writer. He was a travel writer. What does a travel writer do? It's a genre of travel literature which encompasses outdoor literature, guidebooks, nature writing, and travel memoirs. So this guy was a travel writer, a Scottish traveler and a travel writer. He went to North Africa and Ethiopia to trace the origins of the Blue Nile. This is a man who was a travel writer and a brilliant adventurer. He spent more than a dozen years in North Africa and Ethiopia when it wasn't easy to spend a dozen years in North Africa and Ethiopia. Even though he looks like a bit of a dandy, he spent 12 years in North Africa and Ethiopia, and according to Wikipedia, he stole the book of Enoch from Ethiopia. Think about that. Now, not only was he a travel writer, not only was the book of Enoch the most sought after document in those times, and not one page, nary a page, had ever been found. Now, he went on one of his great journeys, and he does look a bit like a dandy, doesn't he? Looks a bit like a dandy, but the man actually, I don't know where he got his lipstick when he was in Ethiopia, but he did go out and he did go to Ethiopia. So here he was in 1768. He went down to Egypt and resolved to discover the source of the Nile, which he believed to rise in Ethiopia. So he goes to Ethiopia looking for the source of the Nile. And after recovering from malaria, I mean, this guy did a lot of great stuff, a lot of amazing stuff. And soon after he climbed to 9,500 feet, he came upon a rustic church, little swamp. Then he declared that it was the source of the Nile, had a toast to the king, and said that he found the source of the Nile. Isn't that great? So that's pretty interesting. Now, he was going back to Britain, and he gave an interview to the London magazine. Most people did not believe his stories. And not only did he go and find the source of the Nile, but he brought back to Europe Ethiopian manuscripts. He brought back so many Ethiopian manuscripts that he was able to present a specifically prepared copy of the Book of Enoch to King Louis. And he was able to present one to the King of England. Not only did he find one copy of the Book of Enoch, which would have been fabulous, he found not two of them, which would have been extraordinary. He found three of them, which is almost beyond belief, or is it just completely beyond belief? It was the apocryphal text that had been lost in Europe since the Middle Ages. And with the exception of a few quotations and some Greek fragments preserved in the Byzantine Chronicler and first published in 1606, any attempt at acquiring the manuscript had failed. Of the three copies, Bruce gave one to King Louis for the French National Library. He gave another one to the Bodleian Library at Oxford, and the third was kept by Bruce himself and was also added to the collections after his death in 1794. The three manuscripts brought by Bruce marked the beginning of the modern studies on the Book of Enoch. Remember, nobody believed his stories. They were met with incredulity. Incredulity. And his claims to have found the source of the Nile were met with incredulity. How about his claims to have found the Book of Enoch? Now, keep in mind, this guy was gone for 12 years. Remember when we said this? He went on a 12-year journey to, where does it say that? He spent more than a dozen years in Ethiopia. Happened to find 3 copies of the Book of Enoch. Or did he? Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This Scottish travel writer was fluent in speaking and writing. Guess what? The very same language that the copies of the Book of Enoch that he brought back to Europe were written in. Did you hear me? The man was fluent. The man was fluent in the language, writing and speaking, the very language that the 3 copies of the Book of Enoch were written in, that he brought back after more than a dozen years in Ethiopia, that no one had been able to find for hundreds and hundreds of years. And he found not 1, he found not 2, he found 3 copies. Isn't that amazing? It's been lost for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And the guy who makes dubious claims to have found the source of the Blue Nile also makes equally dubious claims to have found not 1, not 2, but 3 copies of the Book of Enoch. And he just happened to have the ability to write in the language of the books that were found. No, I'm not saying that the man brought back fake books, but all the signs certainly point to that. I don't have two initials for my first name because I'm embarrassed of my first name. I'm Jeffrey Allen Darty, and I'm telling you, he brought back fakes, phonies, forgeries. The man was an adventurer. The man was a teller of tall tales. The man was a writer of tall tales. He didn't find 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. He found none. He wrote them his damn self, and he brought them back, and they made him a superstar. Not in his own lifetime, probably, because a lot of people didn't believe him, but now he's a superstar. And it's this book that many of these modern teachers want us to believe over the book of Genesis that says, no, it didn't happen. So what you're left with is a manuscript that is highly questionable, that teaches a doctrine based on a horrible mistranslation of a scripture that we have seen is clearly stating that there was no sex between any spiritual beings and women, flying in the face of the logic of a giant having sex with a woman. And short of him shape-shifting, as someone suggested, or short of there being artificial insemination, what we're getting is artificial insemination. That's why we believe this stuff. Somebody asked me, was it turkey baster invented back then? I'm not sure. But to believe it requires such ridiculous and fantastical leaps of logic. If you want to believe that a book that was probably forged, teaching something that is against what the book of Genesis clearly states, well, you can believe it. But you now have the whole facts about the book of Enoch, and you now know why your friendly Christian whistleblower says, without a doubt, it's a fake, it's a forgery, it's a phony. And it's as fake and felonious as the doctrine that there were spiritual beings that had sex with women, or that there were giants that had sex with women. That is a teaching that is foreign to any of the scriptures that are visited with any veracity and with any authenticity. The scriptures that do have at least a modicum of authenticity say that no, it never happened. So the question is, why is there a group of people from antiquity until today that are trying to convince us that we are subject to rape by extraterrestrial entities? And why has it been brought down even to the supposed author of a salvation that we really don't need? Why did it come down even to the little baby Jesus lying in the manger with his golden fleecy Ricky Bobby diapers? These people that misinterpret Genesis 6 want us to believe that we're subject to rape by spiritual or angelic entities. These people that forged and continue to support a forged book of Enoch want us to believe that we are subject to rape by extraterrestrial entities. And your friendly neighborhood apostle Paul wants you to believe that you are subject to extraterrestrial rape. Now, let me just give you a little preview. This isn't the scripture I'm talking about. We'll show you the scripture I was talking about later in our next segment of this. But let me show you this scripture just to give you an idea, ladies, of what Paul thinks about you, and to show you the genesis, again, the continuation of this horrible doctrine. For this reason, a woman ought to have a sign of authority on her head because of the angels. Well, what in the world does that mean? Well, that's 1 Corinthians 11:10. So let's look at it in the interlinear. Woman sinned, not man, is what he just said. Well, let's back up and show the first verse of this. Man was not created for woman, but woman was created for man. Because of this, for this reason. So let's look at verse 10. Because of this reason, because woman was made, let's go back. I got to show you this. Verse number 9, interlinear. This is going to blow your mind, ladies. Verse number 9. Truly indeed was created man on the account of, woman not, but woman was created on the account of man. Woman was created on the account of man. Watch this. Woman was created for the sake of man. Ladies, don't you know you were only created for the sake of man? And you will see that this clearly means sexual pleasure. So women, you were created for the sexual pleasure of men. Doesn't that make you feel good? You were created for the sexual pleasure of men. And because they were created for the sexual pleasure of men, this is why they must have authority on account of the angels, because of the angels. Because if a woman didn't have a mark of authority, which is a man, power, authority, weight, she would be off banging any kind of angel that wants to bang her. You women can't even keep your legs closed for angels if it wasn't for us men to keep you straight. That's just a little taste, just a little dabble, do you, for part 3 of Sex Toys of the Gods. Part 1, we showed you that Genesis 6 in no way teaches that there are spiritual entities, angels, that men or women can have sex with. In fact, it teaches expressly that there was not, and that these beings were of the earth, not of the heavens, and that they were men, not any type of an angelic or spiritual entity. Today, we learned that the book of Enoch is highly subject, and your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower says it's fake, phony, fraudulent, and it's the only other place, well, it's number 2 of 3 places, we'll show you the third place tomorrow, where it's actually taught that extraterrestrials can have sex with humans. Extraterrestrial spiritual entities can have sex with humans. So 2 strikes, you know how it works in baseball, 3 strikes, you're out. I'm warming up in the bullpen to bring you part 3 tomorrow. Probably at our 11 o'clock visit in the morning. So with that being said, we will make our way into the chat room and see what is crack-a-lacking in there at 11:22 on the East Coast. Good evening, Rhonda. People who do court codes on the Torah claim that the book of Enoch is also coded. Well, good for them. Digging these original vomiters. Thank you. Wikipedia. Ha ha ha. It's been a tough day today. Sorry about that. I don't know when the occasional would arrive, when the angel's junk would be topical. How about that? The guy had okay. Jen, you know now where the book of Enoch came from, right? One wonders if he was friends with Arthur Conan Doyle. That's interesting. I'll have to check that out. Looks more like lip gloss. There were 3 books of Enoch, yep. Book of Enoch may be extremely interesting, but it's also a forgery. No, it was in Ethiopic was the name of the language. Three copies of a mystery book. How about that? Yeah. And I bet it did make him pretty wealthy. This dude found them in, what was it, 1780 something? No, he didn't chisel them. They were written on paper. They were fake and bake, absolutely. Well, I mean, I can see what you're saying, Spirit Wind Radio, but you're believing Enoch without any veracity. Genesis does at least have some textual veracity. Just looking through this. Yeah, you're slutty sandwich makers. So there you go. There you go. So I'll leave it at that. The book of Enoch is a fake. It's a fraud. It's a forgery. The first Genesis 6 that everyone said is what proves spiritual entities had sex. Wrong. Didn't say that. Book of Enoch, highly subject. And tomorrow we'll look at the New Testament text that says that extraterrestrials can rape women. And we'll see. And yes, we are getting the flat earth stuff from Enoch too, by the way. By the way. There you go. Well, folks, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. This has been the gospel truth about the book of Enoch. Is it real? Is it fake? Sex Toys of the Gods, Part 2. I hope you'll be back tomorrow for Sex Toys of the Gods, Part 3. Extraterrestrial sex in the New Testament. Yes, it's there. And you're going to be shocked to find where it is. Trust me on that. I salute those of you that are here seeking after truth. I encourage you to remember there's no original sin but the spark of divinity within. I encourage you to love yourself, love your neighbors, be excellent to each other. As the Christ said, that would be the way that people know that you are his follower. And keep making the change you want to see. Make the change you want to see. And above all else, stay fearless, my friends.